From Indiana. He's also a member of the House Armed Services Committee and an Afghanistan war veteran. Jim Banks, Congressman, where were you when you heard this news breaking overnight? And tell us what your first thoughts were, your first reaction.
Well, like so many others, I was glued to my Twitter feed as the news unfolded. So this is big news. It's been minimized by so many of the Trump critics this morning, but without minimizing the killing of Osama bin Laden, I don't want to do that. I do want to compare it to that because in some ways, this is even much more significant than killing Osama bin Laden. And what I mean by that is Baghdadi was not just the spiritual leader of ISIS, he was the chief recruiter. He was hunkered down, but he was still recruiting all of the young ISIS fighters that were coming into the fold because so many of them thought that he was immortal. A lot of people have questioned, why did President Trump go into the gory details this morning in his press conference? Why did he talk about Baghdadi in that moment that he was killed? It's because he was showing that he indeed was a mortal human being and that we killed him. He was a source of evil. And that's going to destroy the recruiting efforts of ISIS moving forward. Now, that's why this is so significant.
Why do you think the comparison with the capture and kill of Osama bin Laden is relevant?
Again, I'm not minimizing the killing of Osama bin Laden. I joined the military.
No, but you and a lot of folks today are sort of, the instinct is to hearken back to that operation. You know, why sort of strategically is that a relevant
The killing of
comparison?
Osama bin Laden was retribution. This was very strategic. And that's why when President Trump first came to office, he brought his senior officials together, his senior national security officials together and said, we're going to do whatever it takes to kill Baghdadi. And this was the culmination of that last night in President Trump achieving a very key victory. This is a big moment for his administration. It's a big moment for our country, and it's a big moment for our national security.
Were you disappointed that the president didn't brief more of your colleagues, not even necessarily during the run-up to the operation, but in the immediate aftermath of the operation?
I don't blame the president one single bit. And that's the disappointment of this impeachment, the ridiculousness of the impeachment hoopla on Capitol Hill is it distracts so much from the key issues like this. And I don't blame the president at all. I know that he did reach out to Chairman Burr in the Senate. They did brief others in Congress. The statute from 1947 is very vague on who the Intelligence Committee has to brief in Congress, but they did make an effort to do that. And in protecting the mission, of course, they left out some key members of Congress that they were afraid might politicize it and ruin it.
Well, the vice president told Chris Wallace a couple of hours ago that the main concern here was leaks, and so he didn't share information with the Democrats because he felt particularly wary of the idea that folks on the other side of the aisle might leak. That was the vice president's explanation. What do you think this does to the organization? You know, it already has lost its caliphate. It has a very robust presence online. The ideology lives on. So how do you think this impacts all of that moving forward?
Again, if Baghdadi was the chief recruiter, this drastically hurts the ISIS recruitment efforts moving forward. I mean, Baghdadi, he self-declared himself as the caliph of ISIS, the spiritual leader of ISIS, and by wiping him out, killing him, that's going to drastically reduce, if not kill altogether, the recruitment efforts of ISIS moving forward.
Well, the problem, as you mentioned, with him being a spiritual leader is that there's a powerful radical ideology that comes along with this terrorist outfit. So, you know, a lot of our reporters are telling, like Jennifer Griffin, are telling us that this does not mean that ISIS's ideology dies.
I completely agree with
unfortunately.
that. We've seen ISIS rebuild in places like in Afghanistan in recent months. The efforts aren't over, but this does show that this administration's approach is working. The approach in Syria is the right approach. We're not abandoning the region. We're going to keep up the fight and pressure on ISIS. It wasn't that long ago that the most previous president called ISIS the junior varsity of terrorism. President Trump campaigned on killing and wiping out the caliphate and wiping out ISIS. He's kept that campaign commitment to the American people, and today was a culmination of a long-term effort to wipe out one of the key figures.
Well, it sounds like your sort of big takeaway here is great victory doesn't mean the threat is completely wiped from the face of the earth, but is a great step in the right direction.
We can't end our efforts. I serve on the Armed Services Committee, and we are very keenly aware of ISIS's efforts throughout the world. And I know this president and his administration is as well. We're not going to, this doesn't end our efforts, but it's a big piece in the overall victory.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it, sir.